Just getting everyone in this room together is going to know. Just getting everyone in this room together. All right, I can be loud.
You can use one of these as well.
All right, but not both together. How's that? That's good.
Better.
Yep, that's just better. Thanks, Larry. So welcome to Celebrate Waukesha. We have a phenomenal program for you. If you haven't already heard about it, I think you'll be very happy that the City of Waukesha and Waukesha County are working together to take care of one of the issues that's something that needs to be addressed. And we've worked on addressing it for years, but I think we found something that is really going to help and has been helping. I also want to say, as I think most of you know, my mother passed away last week. I've received many condolences and sympathy, and I much appreciate it. I do need to say that my mom lived her life on her own terms, and the family is very good in where we are right now because I think what we all take joy in is that my mom is with her husband Bill, who she's been pining for since 2007. My dad is very happy too, except he probably can't play as much golf. And I would imagine the golf courses in heaven are phenomenal. I want to also say we have a number of elected officials here. From Ron Johnson's office, Ginger Goldsberger, Senator Baldwin, Rebecca Beretta. We have Representative Scott Allen, and Waukesha County Supervisor. So this is great that we got a number of Waukesha County Supervisors here because they're going to hear about some of the things that the county's doing if they don't already know. We have Paul Decker, Mike Crawley, Daryl Enriquez, and Larry Nelson. We also have a number of common council members, Mike Anderson, Mike Christine, Alicia Halton-Slavin, Rick Lemke, Elizabeth Moulton, Joe Piper, and our brand new person, Paul Watuska. He's right down here if you want to talk to the new alderman. We have our city attorney, Brian Running, and we also have the mayor of Brookfield, Steve Ponto. So let's give him a round of applause. I'm going to use one of my dad's old jokes. I also want to thank all the notaries. So. We'd always say that at bar functions, which was every single one of the people in there was a notary. I want to thank Tuscan Hall. They always do a phenomenal job. They get us fed very well, and there's never, the food is great, and they're always on time, and we can get this thing moving. Also, the centerpieces are done by the Helping Hands Senior Group through Waukesha Park Recreation and Forestry Department. And the centerpieces are phenomenal. Where's Rebecca? She may be in the other room. Oh, what do you want? Are we keeping these, or do we want people to take them if they want them?
They can take them if they want them.
All right, so there you go. If you want a centerpiece, take them a centerpiece. With that, I am going to introduce Gina St. Koslick, who is our interim city administrator, and she's going to provide some city updates and then also introduce our speakers. Gina?
Thank you all for coming and joining us this morning as we celebrate Waukesha. It's hard to believe that August is here already, but we still have lots of great summer events to take part in. I know you saw quite a few of them streaming earlier. Make sure you mark them on the calendar. Tomorrow night, Waukesha Night Out at Frank Park. And also tomorrow, Waukesha Jazz at Cutler Park. Riverside Rhythms, that's always a tongue twister for me, I got through it, is happening every Wednesday over lunch in downtown. If you can get down there and check it out. And don't forget about our 2 remaining Trigger Tuesday concerts. West Broadway was recently reopened in downtown. This is a significant milestone as it marks the end of the downtown reconstruction program that began back in 2014. Work was done on each of the streets in downtown, I heard some clapping, to make improvements to our roadway, utility, and streetscape. As part of the Broadway reconstruction project, base was installed for the Main Street Parade Memorial. The rest of the memorial will be installed this fall with a dedication plan for November 21st, the 2nd anniversary of our tragedy. There is still work to be done to raise funds for the Green Park Memorial, which will be the larger reflective memorial space. You'll find cards at your tables with the QR code. Pick them up. We're looking for your donations, or feel free to reach out to Rebecca directly. Please help us in any way that you can. Next week, we'll be holding a grand opening and ribbon cutting for the new Forum Skate Park on August 9th from 5:30 to 7. Also, a few months ago, we released a resident guide. This is a great guide that provides information to our new or current residents of city services, programs, or news, and it's available through our website. So if you have a need, point people there. We are just entering the project initiation stage for the city's strategic plan. The plan will reflect our vision for the city over the next several years, and it's an important planning tool for us. As we move through the phases of that project, we will be reaching out to you to gather your input also, so look at that. Also, we're preparing for transition to Lake Michigan water. That's going to happen in early September. If you're a resident of the city of Waukesha, or you own a business here in Waukesha, please make sure you've reviewed the water transition webpage, and that's greatwateralliance.com/transition. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the water utility. With that, I'd like to introduce our police chief, Chief Dan Thompson, Sonny and Jason from our Waukesha Police Department, and we also have representatives from Waukesha County, Melissa and Mary Ann, here with us today to tell us about our new crisis response unit.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Okay. All right. If not, I'll speak louder. But so I did not plan on saying anything because I prepared for my team to speak, and they'll speak for themselves. But I'll say this: this topic of mental health is it's not going to go away. It's actually going to be we're going to have more and more contacts in law enforcement with people who are in crisis. But here's the good thing, though, is we are now moving forward in identifying and problem solving at the right way. What I mean by that is it takes relationships and partnerships to move them out, right? And what we got to do is we got to not criminalize mental health. We are excellent and take care of stubbed toes, broken fingers, and things of that nature. Mental health is a different animal. And this partnership that we have with Waukesha County and our crisis unit, to me, is a godsend. This is a step moving in the right direction, and how law enforcement and how communities problem solve people who, and problem solve and engage people who are in mental crisis. Because what we don't want to do is criminalize them and traumatize them more. And what this team does is a phenomenal job of engaging not just with the community, but also with our law enforcement partners, and also hospitals and other mental health facilities, identifying system issues and reducing those issues and mitigating those issues. So what we do is we bring the best product for our community. And that is helping for people in mental crisis, getting them the help that they need, and helping them sustain where they don't go back into crisis again, especially if people don't continue to go take their medication. So I don't want to talk more. I'm going to let the team talk about it, but I'm so passionate about it, and we got some great champions built, not just within the county, but our 2 officers here are definite champions. That's what we need. We need champions to move mountains, right? So I'm going to let them speak and introduce themselves, and I'm going to go put my pretty face down and sit in the corner.
Thank you. I feel like this one's way louder. Hi, my name is Melissa Helen. I am part of the crisis team with Waukesha County. I have the honors of riding along with them as part of crew as our response unit. So a little bit about my background. So our clinicians, masters for mental health, also have education and credentialing for substance abuse. So both kind of go hand in hand together. So I'd love to, no? Oh, I'd love to be a part of this. I'm covering for somebody that's out on maternity leave. So as she transitions back, we're still trying to provide coverage out in the community.
So I'm Jason Fick. I'm with the City of Waukesha Police Department. I've been with the department for 19 years. I've done a lot of things with the department, ranging from school resource officer to the drug unit to day shift, afternoon shift, the late shifts, and now working with the crisis response unit, Sonny, my partner, Melissa and Anna, and we also have Angela, and right now we have one crisis response unit from HHS, and we're very much looking to get in the future.
Hear that, supervisors?
We just need more qualified people, that's the problem.
We're working on it here.
I know, that's the problem. Yeah, Carol, it's a systematic thing for all work.
Correct, and we're going to be talking about system breakdowns throughout this presentation. I'm Sunny Schneider. I am Jason's partner, the other part of the team. We're both in the neighborhood engagement right now, and I hit my 4-year mark today. So it's my first very excited about that. But before that, I came from the military. I worked in small manufacturing, so really got a lot of different experience. And what I like about Jason and I, what we bring to the table is that we do have that diverse life experience. While he's been a cop for a long time, and I haven't, we both are older. We've been around the block. We've had parents who've been ill. We've had family with mental health struggles, and that's why this is a passion project for us. And I can't say that any stronger than that. The ring on my finger I wear for my dad, who passed away in 2018. Not only struggled with substance abuse issues, but also mental health. He was bipolar. So when we're out on the street, and I know Jason's got his own story, this is our heart. Okay, so when we talk to you about this, we're in it with everything we have. And I just want to second what Chief said. We could not do this without our clinicians and the support of the county. So thank you, ladies, so much for everything you bring to the team. It's everything, and it's been awesome. It's been so wonderful. All right, without further ado, we're going to talk about the crisis response unit. But what I want you to think about is how many of you, we have a tendency to say it's a mental health issue and that doesn't touch us necessarily, right? When we get a call from a citizen, somebody out on the street asking for gas erratically, it's almost as if they forget that mental health kind of touches, right, all of us. Because who in this room hasn't been in crisis before? Who hasn't been depressed? Who hasn't maybe thought, man, I could just kill myself today? Or had a loved one who's struggling with dementia, or a child with autism, right? Any kind of situation that we might see in the community, it touches all of us. So when we're going through this, just keep that in mind. This is something that affects the community, like Chief said. This is not just to one group of people, this is all of us. So remember that. Okay, so in January of last year, Jason and I started our partnership, and we're like, hey, there's some issues going on in the city that we want to talk about. And the first one was what Chief mentioned, that increasing mental health calls. We're going to look at some data later on that shows the increase in that. A lot of times when we're having these mental health calls, it's for repeat contacts as well. So it's maybe the same individual that we are having multiple contacts in the month, and that will continue for the whole year. But then we have the criminalization of mental health, and we know it's mental health and not so much of behavioral. The other big issue.
Over the past 19 years, handling the multitude of homeless calls and just seeing it happening over and over and over again, especially in our Riverwalk area and things like that. We just realized that it was a real big problem. We wanted to find some real solutions to connect community partners and get things going so that we could work with the people that were down at the Riverwalk and other areas of the city to reduce homelessness, to help the people in the homeless community, and also decriminalize it. Because homelessness is not a crime. We want to work with them to find them support and stable processes that make their lives better.
And so we thought, okay, what's going to be the solution for this? And ultimately, we didn't come up with the first brand new idea. The co-responder model, which is a Melissa riding with a Jason, that's throughout the entire nation. That's been around for over 10 years now. And so it's not a new concept, it's tried and true. It works really well for cities that have constant issues with this. And we thought, we could use that here. And we could also then not only be reactionary, meaning taking those calls that are coming in as they're coming in, but we could be proactive and do the follow-up and do that relationship building with the community to try to, keep it from becoming a police call ultimately. So here was the solution to that. Common Council, thank you very much, passed it in November of last year, which meant that by January of this year, we were officially started. We started part-time. It wasn't like a full-time right away. I think it was March before we got full-time, meaning Monday through Friday from 10 to 6 p.m. initially. And that was with Anna Diaz, who's on maternity leave that Melissa was talking about. And it's been wonderful because when crew is not operational, I'm sure you're wondering, well, when it's not 10 to 6, what do you guys do? We do what we've always done, which is our chief is a champion for CIT training. That's crisis intervention training. And I can tell you very proudly that at this point, our department is over 90% trained, all of our patrol officers as CIT officers. That gives them that extra bit of knowledge on how to deal with people in crisis beyond, when Jason and I aren't there. So they will still respond to the calls. And then the normal process, even if we don't have a clinician writing with us, is we have that 24/7 crisis line where we can connect with the clinician and still have them come out to the scene and meet us and do the evaluation. So we always have coverage. It's just we have more effective coverage from 10 to 6 Monday through Friday. And we're looking to grow that, like you said, so fingers crossed. Calls that we're going to, are there any kind of mental health call? We more and more are going to memory care calls, so folks with dementia and have help family members handle that. It's really hard and they need resource help. But we will also go to calls for, we might call it like an uncontrollable juvenile, both that juvenile has autism or something else, and we bring some extra training and resources to help that parent navigate the situation. And then the big thing that we do is we really try to work with our community partners. So this is not an exhaustive list, but we have the Aging and Disability Resource Center, the Adult Protective Services, VA for Veterans Affairs, again regarding homelessness and the mental health, but particularly the homeless, we verify whether or not somebody actually is a veteran, and then we try to get them, we get more resources when you are a vet. So we try to connect the dots that way. And then we work with our shelters and then NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. Yes. So, that's it.
So, and again, because I came in to cover this, so this was already a county program, but naive for myself, I thought it was strictly going to a mental health call. Strictly going to a call that could result in emergency detention. There's that dangerous situation. But again, admitting being naive, it really has been a widespread of everything. You know, I went to a car accident, which resulted in this woman admitting that she has an issue with an addiction, and so we were able to get her connected with resources. Another call was a wandering male. What are we going to do? We're going to find him, then what? But realistically, it was a couple, and the woman was the legal guardian over her husband, and she said, hey, simply, I cannot keep him safe anymore. He's wandering. All I did was take a shower, and he's gone. We're new to Waukesha. He doesn't know where he's going. He was bruised up. He's even falling down. So again, it's such a wide spread. So that's been the neatest part, is just being out in the community, really connecting with people, stopping out with homeless people. Hey, can't be in the gazebo today. But again, it's like building that relationship. So it's been a very cool experience.
So very quickly, if you guys have questions about this, please just, we'll answer them at the end, but we're just gonna do a very generic brush stroke here on what chapters are. First off, in the police world, we call them dispositions. Jason,
Yeah.
what is a VT? Go for it.
So yeah, we have three dispositions. We have voluntary treatment, which is where they realize that they have a problem and they're willing to go to the hospital and work on their own problems.
And then the safety plan, we will work with Melissa, with the crisis clinician, but ultimately, this is just a very simple example. But let's say somebody is suicidal, they're thinking about slitting their wrist, let's say. But they're able to,
I'll get it back on.
they're able to have, like, let's say a mom or a dad or a loved one be with them, and they can lock up all the sharps. That's a safety plan, right? So we have the mode of how they want to hurt themselves. If we can lock those up and keep them safe for the night, that would be like a plan. And then the other thing that was on the screen here is what we call an ED, emergency detention. Okay, and there are 3 different kinds of emergency detentions, and that's overwhelming a lot. I know it's probably hard to see there, but this is one of those things, if you have more questions, just let us know. But very simply, 5115s, which they're called emergency detention by law enforcement officer. What's happening?
Actually, I should have tried in here.
So the 5115s, officers need a clinician to approve them. Even though we're taking that person in custody, we're doing that report, we ultimately can't just magically wave a wand and do it ourselves. We need Melissa. For the other 2 chapters up here, the 55 and the 5145, we can do it on our own. The beauty of crew is that in all 3 of these situations now, you've got the police resources and the crisis resources, and we're working together. So we're getting an even better outcome for people in making these decisions. So very simply, straightforward, what is a 5115, Melissa?
Yes, so essentially we're going out in the community and seeing if there is that keyword is the dangerousness. So again, we're hoping that, though crew call is typical, we're hoping that it can be just an explanation to this individual that is in crisis. Ultimate goal is to talk them into voluntary treatment. If that's not an option and the safety plan is not an option, and we don't feel that they can be safe in the community, they're a danger to themselves, they're a danger to others, then we do have to authorize that emergency detention as the least restrictive setting, meaning they need to have inpatient hospitalization. The next one down, so a protective placement, like we had already talked about, so if that individual does have an activated power of attorney, does have a legal guardian, no longer able to stay in their own home, maybe they're an elopement risk, that is when we go in and authorize the protective placement. And then the 5145 is again due to alcohol. So meaning that they are unsafe in that moment. Those, I guess, emergency attentions are a little different just because once they are stable, so maybe it is they are taken to the hospital, but once their alcohol level comes down, that just clears. We don't need to go through a court process with that. So, but again, so if we can't get voluntary, we're looking into safety planning. Nice part about that, again, being myself with clinicians involved, our crisis team can then follow up with them. So we had the crisis situation, the safety plan, but what about a follow-up call tomorrow? Do you want us to follow up with you during normal business hours to make sure you were able to get connected with a therapist? So again, that safety plan isn't just in the moment, it's something that we can offer services later.
So along with that is, back to
There, I have it. I have it covered. I can talk about third-party petitions. So again, if we're going out to a call, it's not enough to meet criteria that we need per the Wisconsin State Statute for an emergency detention. We're providing resources to that family. So meaning we need 3 people that can write into the court to say, hey, there is a mental illness here. Here's what we're seeing when they're out in the community. So again, it can still result in them getting inpatient care, but it's not that immediate. So again, it's typically just explaining to families, because again, if we're responding to a call, but there's not that imminent dangerousness right there, that doesn't mean that this person doesn't need intensive help. But again, it's another avenue that we can help out families. Is this standard?
Yep, yeah, and the standards, yep.
Yep, so, and then fifth standard is yet another avenue, but that is, again, the inability to care for themselves. How can we help out this individual within the community? So we're looking at multiple avenues.
Yep, different tools in the tool belt, as we like to say. So if the one doesn't fit, then we will pursue other things. Managed care organizations, or MCOs, are what has been wonderful about the partnership with Crisis is that you guys can see that,
Yes.
and then you do the communicating with them and say, hey, we have a person on your radar, and this is what's happening with them.
Yeah, so managed care organizations are when somebody completes a functional screen, meaning they look at their ability to care for themselves, how they complete their acts of daily living, and they might need an assigned case manager. They might need an assigned registered nurse to meet with them. So the nice part is I can look that up, obtain that information, hey, just so you're aware, your consumer is registering police calls. Like, what can we do? What they really need more support. Is this going to look into placement? Is it just more context? Do we need medication management? So having that partnership too has been very helpful.
And then this is the last bullet for this slide, but can you just talk a little bit about those options?
Yep, so if somebody is voluntary saying, hey, yes, I wanted you guys to come out here because I'm really looking to see what are my options in regards to treatment. So obviously most restrictive, kind of going down, is inpatient, so that is in a locked inpatient psych setting. Really can range in regards to how long treatment is, but again, it's that dangerousness piece. So they're not able to keep themselves safe. They meet with an attending psychiatrist on the inpatient unit to determine when they're safe to return to the community. Next step down from that is partial hospitalization. So we're looking at 5 days a week, looking at 6 hours of treatment. Again, barrier to that is individuals work full-time. Maybe they can't get off. So we step that down one more level, and that's our intensive outpatient. So typically 3 days a week, but that's only for 3 hours a day. They made that so it's like a 6 to 9 p.m. in case they're working full-time, really trying to meet the client where they're at. And then the last is outpatient. So meaning outpatient, I go in to meet with my therapist bi-weekly. I meet with my psychiatrist on a monthly basis. So those are kind of all of our resources that we can offer in regards to level of care.
Okay, so just going through some of our missions and goals, and we're going to talk about this, but then also say how it's been going well since we started. The first one is that our goal is not actually to go around chaptering the whole world. And we would like to actually reduce chapters by getting people stable in their home or whatever that safe environment is. or getting them to at least agree to voluntary. So the nice thing about crew is that even if we're going to those constant, those repeat customers basically in the community, or if it's a one-time, we're bringing all the resources that first call, whatever that is. And then for those repeat people, we're bringing the history of knowing who those people are so that we can continue to see, okay, well, this was the problem last time, where are we at today? And how do we troubleshoot that?
Sure. Which you kind of touched on already a little bit, but we're building rapport with our citizens, and we're staying in touch with them, we're maintaining the contact with them, so that we're following up and hopefully taking away their constant calls to law enforcement or their approaches to, getting in touch with us. We're getting in touch with them so that hopefully we can reduce their interaction with law enforcement and lessen the likelihood that things will turn into a criminal matter.
And honestly, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but what we're realizing is that community is, I would just say, lonely. A lot of these folks, they just want to feel like somebody cares. And if I send them an email once a month when they email me, honestly, that has shown to reduce calls with that person. And right, so this goes back to we're all human beings. This is just kind of that human connection. So we'll send emails, we'll do follow-up calls, how you doing, what's going on, just to really show that we do care and we want to know what's going on.
And we do plenty of house visits too, and we get a lot of phone calls from the people saying how much they appreciate it, how much it's helped them.
Crisis plan, we can do that too. Meeting with the actual family, bringing them into the PD, hey, what can we do? This is what we're seeing, what you're seeing at home. Oh.
Yeah. The next one was really important to our department, where we basically wanted to focus on how do we, when we go to mental health calls, how do we use our best possible de-escalation skills. I will say right now, I'm the new cop. I've been doing this for 4 years. I will tell you right now that if we ever have to have a response to resistance, is what we call it. That's not really us choosing to do that. That is somebody else making that choice for themselves. But thankfully, crew has had 0 of those incidents. We have been able to talk and negotiate and navigate this without any response to resistance. I don't know that will always be 0 because we can't control what the people in our community, if it's a bad day, it's a bad day. But I'm very proud of that number today as I stand before you. So that's a good win.
And when we were doing our research with other departments, like one that I remember specifically was West Dallas, and at the time he had been doing this for 4 years and had 0 uses. Well, keep that going.
So the next one here is just, again, it's just about we want to decriminalize, whether it's homelessness, mental health issues. We want to work with all of our tools and have good exit strategies, and we utilize, we call them flags, but it's just ways for us to keep track of what's going on with a person, not to get them in trouble. It's to, we might touch 50 people in a week, and so the only way that we can keep track of what's going on with that person is to make a note, what we call the note flag. So yeah, it's nothing more than that. But this is what's helping us to say, hey, look, we're not going to arrest this person today. This is what's going on. They probably need a shot right now, so let's get them to mental health so they can get their shot.
And we're also getting notifications of specific people that we're having frequent contacts with so that we can call them and say, hey, sounds like you had a rough week. What's going on? How can we help you today? Sure. Which one is it?
The reduce. Yep. So everything that we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce times.
Oh, yeah. This really is our biggest one. And 15 years ago, we would take hours and hours and hours and tons of resources. 2 years ago. 1 year ago. 1 year ago. Right. And we realized that, and putting this whole team together is really an attempt to reduce the resources, reduce the amount of time in getting the people the help they need and not having them restate their issues over and over again. So.
Yep. And the main thing with that is whenever we say that reduced time, it's, yeah, obviously it benefits the police department, but really it's benefiting that person in crisis, because the sooner we get them to the outcome they need, that's the goal. They're the customer. We want to get them the best possible outcome. So this isn't just about police officer numbers and wait times. This is really about the community members and what they're going through. And then our last major goal that we wanted to do is basically streamline the communication process with our community partners. So whether that's with the hospital, whether that's with crisis even, the ADRC, we are working with all of them to work on system breakdowns and streamline that process for a better outcome. I'm not going to bore you to death with a ton of these things, but I just wanted to show you some numbers. So all these graphs that you're going to look at are from last year. This is all from 2022. So crew is not a thing, but this gives you an idea of kind of what the city is going through. Last year we had 290 people agree to go voluntary on their own. That's the biggest blue on the side graph here. After that, we had 178 emergency detentions. So that's the most restricted for the whole year. And we had about 90 safety plans. So you can kind of start to see how this plays out. The graph on the other side is the breakdown of those 3 emergency detention tanks. So the big old blue, dark blue, those are those 5115s, the emergency in the moment detentions. And then the other 2 for protective placement, a 55 or 5145, are really comparable. It's a horse apiece there. We have about 1 a month on average. So we had 16 and 18 of those and 144 of our 5115s. These graphs are just to show you general trends. So in this upper right corner, that's a mental subject call. That's just how we would code that particular call. The red bar is showing you it's trending upwards. I did include our call total as of today. So we had 600 mental subject calls as of today for this year. Next to it is overdose calls. Again, that one is trending upward. We've had 90 to date. Then we have the suicide down here in and this doesn't mean completion, it just means attempted suicide. That is a downward trend, but for the year we're already at 75 of those. And then the final graph is well-being check. So well-being check is also trending upwards. We've had 659 so far. Well-being check would be anything from, hey, I haven't talked to my mom for 2 weeks, and we talk every week. Not a big deal, not necessarily mental health, or it could be, hey, there's somebody like screaming at the intersection, talking to the heavens, and we don't know what's going on. Well-being check, right? So these are the most likely to have a crisis component, but obviously any call could have a crisis component. The main thing with this, I just showed you the monthly breakdown from January through December, but on average we have 15 emergency detentions a month, 8 safety plans, and 24 voluntaries from last year. These are the hours that these take. On average, a 5115 will take 8 hours from initial touching of that person to getting them to that final destination for mental health. We're going to see another graph about that. 55s take about 2 hours, and 5145s, that's those alcohol EVs, that's about 1 hour. So the 2 and the 1 hour, that's the sweet spot. That's good. You've got no complaints really with that. But the 5115s are a major resource drain. And how do we combat that? Another graph. All of the gray bars here are every type of non-crisis police call. Whether it's a traffic stop, attempted burglary, whatever that might be, that's all the gray. All the blue is the typical length of call time for a crisis call. So, right, you start to see the issues here. How do we get the blue bars to get a little bit closer to the gray? I don't think we'll ever match the gray bars because crisis calls need a little bit more. You've got to slow it down sometimes, essentially. But how do we reduce that where we can? And this graph is one of my favorites because this is only looking at those emergency detentions. There's those 5115s. The darkest little sliver there is emergency detention that took 1 hour. And as it radiates out to the lightest color, that lightest one, 10 plus hours. We had 51 5115s last year that took over 10 That literally is us getting the call, whatever that looks like, making contact with that person, calling crisis to tell them what we have, then deciding to respond or to not respond, waiting for them to respond. This is prior to crew, okay? Then doing the assessment, the person then going to Waukesha Memorial because they have to go through med clearance. Everybody has to go through med clearance, okay? Then they have to get placed somewhere, whether that's Winnebago or Waukesha County Mental Health. It's horribly long. And what I need you to hear is that at any point in time, there's a system breakdown that is likely to happen, right? Person's medically cleared, they fax the paperwork, well, nobody bothered to check for the fax for 2 hours. So we're just sitting in the hospital doing what? So these are some of those system breakdowns and the processes that we're trying to improve. It's always going to take a little bit of time, these calls, but certainly we can do better than 10 hours, right? So how do we get all of these chapters closer to the, I don't think 1 hour is necessarily reasonable, but the 2 to 4 hour, that would be so much more reasonable. So real quickly, just a couple of our positive results. By working with crisis every day, what we realized is there's a lot of calls that Jason and I would go to prior to them, where we just feel like, oh, that's just, Jane being Jane, or acting kind of goofy again. And sometimes it's not actually mental health related. Sometimes it's just strictly behavioral. Well, that helps us because when we start having folks get arrested for whatever that behavior might be, and if it's behavioral and not mental health, then maybe the better outcome is not treatment for a non-existent thing, but maybe you need to sit in jail a little bit or have a higher bail amount. And I'm talking for like super severe cases. We had one individual who was stalking police officers, actually chasing us around. They were chasing us, and was just escalating that behavior. And everybody just said, well, she's, mentally ill, mentally ill. No, it was behavioral. And after she sat in jail for a while, we stopped having calls when she got out. So that's just one of those things where it's not obviously we wish people would just do the right thing without having to do that, but because we understood that person better, we were able to get a better, safer outcome for the community based on that. So other successes here are with those repeat contacts, we have had individuals that will generate, they'll call 911 first off, and it won't be a 911 call. And they'll do that weekly, like every day a week. And if they belong to a managed care organization or they have those case managers, instead of us just keep going and saying, okay, Jane, here we go again. Melissa and our crisis team can reach out to those case managers and say, hey, we've got this many contacts with the police department. Is there nothing we can do better for this person? So we've had some good, we can't name drop, but there's been a couple in the community where it's done now. It's been taken care of because we got a better plan of attack for us.
This is just the communication that we've been having with our HHS. We communicate and hear about the pickup orders, and KBSs, and revocations, so that we're aware of people that may need extra services. And when we're having 10 contacts in a month with someone and we weren't previously aware that they had a pickup order, we just keep having contacts with them. But then now we know that there's an issue. We're like, oh, hey, we know that this person needs their shot today. We can call the county, get that done, and then they get their shot. We're pretty much good with them for the next 30 days. So it's been a great partnership.
Yeah, and where that's significant for the decriminalizing it is that that person is acting disorderly, but it's because they're being symptomatic based on what they're going through. Or let's say a lot of times it's a trespass. They've been told not to come back to a place and then they go back. Rather than arrest them for whatever that is, we take them to get their shot, which helps stabilize them within the community, and then and then we wait a month basically and see if they stay on track or they don't. But that's been great because then we don't have to arrest always, we can actually see what they really need. Exit strategies, one of the major system breakdown, and it's not to pick on anybody in the city by any means, but when we have a tendency to be isolated, islands unto ourselves, right? Whether that's the police department or the hospital or ADRC. And so the flow of communication has been really difficult to establish amongst all And what will happen is somebody will be taken to jail and stay on a warrant. We know that person is homeless. And rather than while they're in jail, right, are you mentally ill? How do we get you that? Do you have a home? How do we get you that? Right, a game plan, an exit strategy. There is nothing. There's nothing. And it's not just the jail. That happens a lot in the community, and that's a shame because, man, if we all just paused and took a minute and thought about how that just rolls downhill in a vicious cycle, what could we accomplish by changing that? So that's something that when we see those system breakdowns, we raise our hand and we say, hey, might we do this a little bit different? And how do we assist you with that, right? It's not just about slamming blame on people. It's about what is your lane of responsibility and how do we work together to solve these problems as a community. Mel?
And Memo's all you, go ahead.
Okay, well, this is another really great example, and this is actually Miss Mariam, who's the catapulter of this. The Waukesha Memorial Memo. Ultimately, what we discovered was that most of our, I'd say about 1/3 of our crisis calls originate from the hospital. Makes sense, because people are going to the hospital, they're in crisis, they're in need. Well, how many of those contacts really require the police department to show up? What this memo does between Waukesha Memorial and County is just basically say if there's nobody's combative, right, this isn't a fight day, nobody's actively trying to leave the hospital if you have a concern, why don't you call crisis first and tell us what you got? What's going on? Before you involve law enforcement, and we'll let you know if we think that we need to come and evaluate that person for a possible emergency detention or whatever that might look like. That has been wonderful because we divert at least, if we get 20 calls a month, I'd say we get 5 now. Where police don't even need to go, which is great, because nobody wants to sit and look at a police officer when they're in crisis, unless they have to. So just love what that has done. It's helped us, and then it's a better product for that person in crisis. And then the last thing is just what we talked about, which is when you know the people in the community and you know their story, you can save a lot of time. The best example of this is there's somebody that has substance abuse issues. Every time she sees me, she goes, "My sonny," and she cries and she puts her arms out, and we just get to business. There's no initial distrust, there's no nothing, it's just she knows who I am, and we can start talking about what's going on. And that is, I think, the goal, right? How do we just get that immediate connection to a faster outcome? And we don't have to go through all these, but these are just the crew numbers from this year. So from January to April, we had 139 calls for service. 23 of those ended up as chapters, 10 as voluntary, 0 safety plans, and 97 of them were to C. Charles. C. Charles you can think of as everything's stable, there's no emergency, we shared some resources, and hopefully that person won't have to have contact with us again.
I just got to throw out some kudos for that, though. That's 139 they're available for. There were a lot more calls that we could have responded to.
So then at the very bottom, I know it might be hard to see, but like in January, we had 99 crisis calls. 21 of those were from WMH. February, we had 92 crisis calls. 23 were from WMH. That's where that number is really impactful if we're able to cut down on calls with them. So thank you so much for your attention. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I do have a question, but I want to share a little county history that ties in.
Sure.
So it was in mid-2021 that we did a pilot program with an embedded mental health professional in our sheriff's department. And what we found, instead of a 40-minute response time, it was like a 20-minute time. And I'm so excited about your presentation because that pilot proved to be so successful that then, I don't think she's here, but I want to give credit to Mary Berg, who works for Park and Rec. She serves on this HHS board that I chair. When she heard about this, she said, shouldn't we be doing this with the Waukesha Police Department? And so then in mid-2022, we added 3 more embedded mental health professionals, 2 with the Sheriff's Department, and credit to Liz Aldrin, our HHS Director, and our Sheriff, Eric Severson. But then a second one is with the City of Waukesha, and Melissa, that's you right now?
Yes.
Correct. And then the other one is at our emergency call center, so that if someone's calling suicidal or whatever, they can jump on it. The other thing we did, our mental health center has a traditional 30-bed hospital. Our census has shown we only needed half of that. So by the end of this year, we're remodeling half the hospital to be a crisis stabilization center that hopefully will open in early 2024, which will give you guys another thing in your toolkit, because that's another missing piece of the puzzle. So my question is, if this is as successful as I've heard and as you're telling us, one of the reasons we added a second person at the Sheriff's Department is we wanted coverage for more hours, because it seems like late night and weekend, is when things happen. So I hope I'm setting up a good question. Are there already discussions long-term to expand this to the city?
Yes, there is. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why behind it is, for example, is you take someone out to jail. Take someone to jail, they could be intoxicated, and they could have other issues going on. They'll take 90% of those individuals and take them to the jail, and they'll be in custody in the jail. If you have someone that's in mental health crisis, 100% of the time, they have to get medically cleared. So when you talk about that memo, that is a huge step in fixing that system issue. So this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And we're moving in the right direction. And we're looking at other models. We're looking at the Arizona model, we're looking at the Miami model, we're looking at these models, and we're actually working with the legislators on trying to move this model in the right direction. But some is politics, because what does it take? It takes money. And it takes champions, right? We are going to stay in the fight. We're going to constantly be pressure checking, engage with our partners, getting them committed to move this ball in the right direction. Here's some great things though, is, I don't know if we talked about it, but right now our average reduction in time is 4 hours. That's a huge step, because a year ago, there'd be times we'd be sitting with individuals for 23 hours. And I remember an instance where officers got sent to Frame Park. Person was in crisis. They were very cooperative, but it took 45 minutes. This is prior to our team, before a crisis worker responded. Well, we had to decentralize and use force on the individual. We don't want to do that. We don't want to criminalize these things. And we have to work with these system issues with our partners. And what we can't do is treat people like objects. They are human beings, whatever the crisis is. I'll just speak briefly on this. Why are we just champions? Not just because of it's the right thing to do. I do also have some personal things, especially his son. He has cerebral palsy, seizure disorders. When he was 3 years old, they said he's not going to make it through the night. He had to read his last rites. And now he's 33. Every morning I check him every morning. He's still one bad seizure away, right? But he's an awesome example. And a mother that's suffering from severe dementia, pretty bad, right? That's everywhere. That is everywhere. These are human beings. They're going through different things. We got to be engaged. You don't hear us talk about community policing. We talk about neighborhood engagement. We are engaged. And you're seeing our champions here, but it's not enough. So to answer your question, one last thing I'll tell you. I've been doing ride-alongs for the past couple weeks. Doing great on day shift, late shift. By 4:30 a.m. I was done. And Tommy, he didn't take me because I could keep my eyes open. But almost every other call, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, we responded to somebody in crisis. What was really awesome is the officers were already having conversations where before we get there, when I was working shifts between the hours that they work, They were being proactive, crisis response team was being proactive, calling an officer while I'm in the car with them before we even got there. And they're giving them a history of what's going on with the industry. That's huge. But almost every other call I was going to has some type of mental health nexus. So we have to expand this unit. Because what does it do? It reduces use of force. It reduces officers having to use violence, right? It reduces those things. It reduces the trauma that these people in crisis are going through when they have to have contacts with law enforcement. Those are huge units for our community. So I'm done with the sermon. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Actually, normally, I'm sorry, I'll get right back to you, but normally our presentation is like an hour and a half. So to follow up on that question just a little bit more, and I've been trying to not talk because I talk way too much. My partner said, but in the research that we've done and in our other presentations that we have, it actually shows like a breakdown every hour throughout the day of when we have all these crisis calls, and it is every hour. It's, we look at it like, oh, well, this time has to be the most. No, it's 2 in the morning, it's 4 in the morning, it's noon, it's 3 in the afternoon. And what statistics actually showed when we started looking at it, like the highest times were like Tuesdays and Thursdays between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. So when we broke it down into the program that we think looks best, is like specific, like 2 shift hours to have more coverage throughout the day. So absolutely, we can certainly use it, and data shows it. Data really shows it, and I wish we had more time to show you that. So
No, that's great to hear, to use the real data to help determine where your coverage should be the most.
absolutely, and that's one hard thing for us too, is we need to figure out better ways to collect better data. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
So you talk about data. What data is so important is instead of taking a shotgun approach to problem solving, we can leverage that data, take a surgical approach, and identify the root cause of the situation and try to remove the bad part, right? Remove that and bring that person's quality of life up. You're going to see some, sir.
Well, I was just going to say that when you brought up, you talked about reduced hours. To Larry's point, we got this in front of the county board, and I see Andy Tilkey, our finance wizard, is here, our head of DOA.
We got a grant. Part of this came through, and I want to thank the chief and other people. There's a lot of cooperation that goes around. We sit on and so the CJCC together. So we're talking. We got a grant, and when we take what's going on in Waukesha, Larry said, when we embedded it to county, there's 37 other communities, and we're in Poncho's here. Spread this out along the county of 400,000 people. Well, we'd have small police forces that were tied up for 6 or 8 hours when an officer, especially overnight, there's nobody back patrolling. We also, in our sheriff's department, are trying to backfill with deputies. So it started really harming our capability. And as I said earlier, it was a systematic approach, finding people. And the challenge is, how do we work together to use all our resources? Because if somebody's just sitting in jail, not the best place for a mental health person, but it's not the best use of our time, their time, and our jail resources. So as Larry said, we're redoing our entire mental health center. But as I have somebody from the state here, it's a matter of what can we do to work with the state so they can be partners with us. Because Mendota and Winnebago are overfilled. It takes our people 8 hours to go up, sit, get them in. That's overtime for, in case our sheriff's department or officers. All this adds up to additional dollars that we'd like to reduce, plus the human side. So we thank you for the statistics, because it was the evidence that we got at the county that helped us put more into it. And Andy and his team helping us find the financing, which is not easier but won't last forever, so we need additional resources.
So I'll say this too, the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. That's not saying it takes a police department. The police department is part of that village, right? But we got to bring all the stakeholders in that village together. We got to be in this together, not just individuals, not just silos, right? We gotta be a bridge where we're in this fight together.
Other questions?
It's 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna. So I'm sorry to stop the questions, but it is 9 o'clock, and I know a lot of people would like to get out here on time. For me, I can say, so I was elected in 2014. I can say that there was frustration among residents, downtown, police department, city hall, alders about these type of issues. And in the last year and a half, it took us. Putting this together was not easy. It's a complex issue. Having everyone work together and getting to this point is great. We still have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of alders here, a lot of county county supervisors, and also the public. This is something that we need to work on together. Carroll University has a program too for training people. They're working on that. So be aware of this. Think about how we manage these type of issues because they are very, very complex. I can tell you, prior police chief says, the police are not going to arrest their way out of this problem, and that's very, very true. The police and County Health and Human Services are doing a lot of work to help us in this, but it also takes the entire community. I think kind of my aha moment was talking to Chief Thompson a while ago, and he was explaining how someone is in crisis, our police will interact with them, have to take them into custody. Maybe that's legally not what they did. But anyways, they're with the police officer. They're in crisis, and they're still with the police officer 8 hours later. You can imagine that their crisis is not ended. It's actually grown exponentially. So when you have a mental health issue, putting them in jail or in custody isn't the way to go. We've got to find a way to get them help right away. With that, I thank everyone for being here. Talk this up, support it, talk to your county supervisors, talk to your state legislator. Yeah, talk to the state legislators, and let's continue growing this program and finding other ways to help work on this issue. So thank you very much.